Chapter 11. Rationality and Harmony. The natural properties and privileges of a rational soul include the ability to see itself, to order and compose itself, to shape itself as it wishes, and to reap its own rewards. Unlike plants, trees, and irrational creatures, which bear fruit for others, not for themselves. Whenever and wherever a rational soul's life ends, it still achieves its own end. It's not like dancers and actors, whose performances would be incomplete if interrupted. A rational soul can make any part of its life or actions complete and full, so that it can leave with the comfort of knowing it has lived fully and lacks nothing that was rightfully its own. The soul encompasses the world, penetrates the superficiality and emptiness of it, and extends itself to the infinity of eternity. It understands the cyclical nature of all things, and realizes that those who come after us will see nothing new that we haven't seen, nor did those who came before us see anything more than we have. By the age of 40, a person can see all things, past and future, because they are all of one kind. It's natural for a human soul to love its neighbor, to be truthful and modest, and to value itself above all else. This is also the principle of the law, which shows that sound reasoning and justice are one and the same. Therefore, justice should be the primary goal for rational beings. You can easily dismiss a pleasant song or dance, or the sports you love, if you break down each component and ask yourself whether each individual sound or movement is what truly captivates you. You'll likely feel embarrassed. Apply this method to your whole life as well. A soul that is ready to leave the body at any moment, whether through death, dispersion, or continuation in another form, is truly blessed. This readiness should not come from stubborn defiance, as is common among Christians, but from sound judgment and seriousness, in a way that can persuade others to follow the same example, but without any loud or emotional outbursts. Have I done something out of kindness? Then I benefited from it. Always keep this thought present in your mind. What is your purpose? To be good. And how can this be achieved, if not through certain principles and teachings about the nature of the universe and the specific constitution of humans? Tragedies were originally introduced to remind people of the unpredictability of life, that such events are part of the natural order. People who enjoy such dramas on stage should not be upset by similar events in real life. Here you see the outcome of such events, and even those who lament loudly must endure them just like everyone else. Indeed, many great things have been said by poets. For instance, there are excellent lines like, "If the gods neglect me and my 2 children, they must have a reason for it, and there's no use in raging against the circumstances, or one should live their life as if reaping a ripe ear of corn." These and other similar lines can be found in their works. After tragedies, ancient comedies were introduced, which had the freedom to criticize personal vices. This freedom of speech was very effective in curbing pride and arrogance. This was the same freedom that Diogenes used. After these, the middle and new comedy were introduced, primarily for the delight and pleasure derived from their skillful and excellent imitation. "It will slip away if you don't pay attention," is a line that no one can deny has some merit. However, the overall purpose and foundation of this type of dramatic poetry is exactly what we have been discussing. How clearly can you see that no other way of life could suit a true philosopher better than the one you are currently living? A branch that is cut off from the tree it was attached to is inevitably cut off from the whole tree. Similarly, a man who separates himself from another man is separating himself from society. A branch is cut off by someone else, but a man who hates and avoids others separates himself from his peers, not realizing that he's also separating himself from the whole community. But the gift and mercy of God, the creator of this society, is that once we're cut off, we can regrow and become part of the whole again. However, if this happens often, the problem is that the further a man is in this division, the harder it is for him to be reunited and restored. Gardeners can tell you that a branch that has been cut off and then grafted back is not the same as a branch that has continuously remained part of the tree. We should grow together like branches in terms of good relations and affection, but not necessarily in terms of opinions. If someone opposes you in your rightful actions, they should not be able to divert you from your good deeds or your good feelings towards them. Make sure you remain consistent in both your actions and your feelings towards those who try to hinder you or are displeased with your actions. Failing in either of these aspects, giving up because of fear or forsaking your natural affection towards someone who is naturally your friend and relative, is equally disgraceful and resembles the behavior of a cowardly deserter. It's impossible for nature to be inferior to art since all arts imitate nature. If this is true, then it's highly unlikely that the most perfect and universal nature of all natures would fall short in its operations compared to the skills of arts. All arts aim to improve what is worse for the sake of what is better. The same is true for nature. This is the basis of justice. From justice, all other virtues emerge. Justice cannot be preserved if we are attached to worldly things, prone to deception, rash, or inconsistent. The things that cause you so much trouble to either obtain or avoid do not come to you, you go to them. Therefore, let your judgments and opinions about these things be at peace. As for the things themselves, they remain silent and still, without any commotion. If you achieve this, all your pursuits and avoidances will cease. The soul is like a sphere or globe, as Empedocles likens it when it is of one shape and form. When it neither greedily reaches out for anything nor contracts itself or lies flat and dejected, but shines with light, it can see and understand the true nature of both the universe and itself. If someone despises me, let them consider why they do so. My concern will be to ensure that I never do or say anything that truly deserves contempt. If someone hates me, let them deal with that. I will be kind and loving to everyone, even to the person who hates me. I will be ready to show them their mistake, not to boast about my patience, but sincerely and humbly, like the famous Phocion, if he was not pretending. For these things must come from within, so that the gods, who look inside and not at the outward appearance, may see a man truly free from anger and sorrow. For what harm can anyone else's actions do to you, if you can do what is appropriate and suitable for your own nature? Won't you, a man entirely devoted to the common good, accept what is now appropriate to the nature of the universe? They scorn each other, yet they strive to impress each other. As they compete for worldly status and grandeur, they demean and exploit themselves. How hypocritical and insincere is the person who declares, "From now on, I will treat you with complete honesty and transparency." What do you mean by this? Why do you need to announce this? Your actions will reveal your intentions. This should be evident in your demeanor. The moment you speak, your face should reflect your thoughts, just as a lover can read the feelings of their beloved in their gaze. A truly honest and good person is like someone with a bad body odor. Anyone nearby can sense their presence whether they want to or not. But pretending to be honest is not commendable. There's nothing more disgraceful than a deceitful friendship. This must be avoided at all costs. However, true goodness, honesty, and kindness cannot be concealed. As we've already said, they will reveal themselves in one's eyes and demeanor. Living happily is an internal capability of the soul, when it is indifferent towards things that are naturally indifferent. To achieve this state, the soul must contemplate all worldly objects, both individually, and remember that no object can form an opinion in us, nor can it approach us. It remains external and peaceful. We form our own opinions about these objects. We have the power not to form these opinions, and if they sneak in and hide in some corner of our minds, we have the power to erase them. Also remember that your vigilance will only last for a while, before your life ends. And what's stopping you from handling all these things well? If they're natural, rejoice in them and find them pleasing and acceptable. But if they're against nature, seek what is natural for you, and strive for it, whether it's in your best interest or not. No one should be blamed for seeking their own well-being and happiness. You must contemplate the origin of everything, what it consists of, and what it will transform into. Understand its nature or what it will resemble after transformation, and that it cannot be harmed by this change. As for others' foolishness or wickedness, it shouldn't upset or bother you. First, consider this: what connection do I have with these? We are all created for the benefit of each other. Then, consider this more specifically, just as a ram leads a flock of sheep, and a bull leads a herd of cattle, so am I born to lead them. Start from this higher principle. If atoms are not the origin of everything, which is the most absurd belief, then we must accept that there is a nature that governs the universe. If such a nature exists, then all inferior things are created for the sake of superior ones, and all superior ones for each other. Secondly, consider what kind of people they are at the dining table, in their beds, and so on. But above all, consider how their beliefs compel them to do what they do, and how they carry out these actions with such arrogance and self-importance. Thirdly, if they're doing things correctly, you have no reason to be upset. But if they're not, they must be doing so unwillingly and out of sheer ignorance. For, as per Plato's belief, no soul willingly errs, so by extension, it doesn't do anything it shouldn't, except against its will. Therefore, they feel upset whenever they're accused of injustice, unfairness, greed, or generally, any harmful behavior towards their neighbors. Fourthly, you also make many mistakes and are just like them. You might not commit the actual act of some sins, but you have a predisposition to them. You refrain from these sins either due to fear, vanity, or some other misguided ambition. Fifthly, you don't fully understand whether they've sinned or not. Many actions are carried out for strategic reasons, and one must know many things before being able to judge another's actions accurately and fairly. Sixthly, when you're deeply upset or distressed, you forget that life is fleeting, and soon we'll all be in our graves. Seventhly, it's not the sins or transgressions themselves that bother us, they exist only in the minds and understandings of those who commit them. Our own opinions about these sins are what trouble us. So, let go of your belief that it's a terrible thing, and you'll let go of your anger. But how can I let go of it? By convincing yourself that it's not shameful. For if shame is not the only true evil, then you too, while following the common instinct of nature to avoid evil, will commit many injustices and become a thief, or anything else that will help you achieve your worldly goals. Eighthly, consider how many things can often follow from such bouts of anger and grief, things far more painful than the issues that initially caused our anger or grief. Ninthly, remember that gentleness is invincible if it's genuine and not feigned or hypocritical. Even the most fierce and malicious person you can imagine won't be able to persist against you if you remain gentle and loving towards them. Even in the face of harm, maintain a good disposition and temper, ready to gently teach and instruct them. For example, you might say, "My friend, we weren't born to hurt and annoy one another. This will harm you more than it harms me." Show them, without sarcasm or reproach, that even animals don't harm their own kind. But do these padmires, without any audience admiring you, even if others are present. Remember these 9 points, like gifts from the Muses, and strive to be a better person. On the other hand, you should avoid flattering people as much as you avoid getting angry with them. Both are equally unkind and destructive. When you're emotional, remember that it's not manly to be angry, but it is to be gentle and kind. There's strength in calmness, while anger and indignation are devoid of it. The closer to calmness, the closer to power. Both grief and anger come from weakness, as both the angry and grieving have been wounded and have surrendered to their emotions. If you want a 10th point, take this from Hercules, the guide of the Muses. It's madness to expect there to be no evil people in the world, because it's impossible. It's unfair and tyrannical to tolerate evil in the world, but not when it's directed at you. There are 4 mindsets you should be aware of, and when you notice them, correct them. Tell yourself, this thought isn't necessary, this is unkind, this is like being someone else's puppet, which is absurd. And for the 4th, scold yourself for letting your divine part become subject to the base desires of your body. Whatever part of you is air or fire, even though it naturally rises, stays here in your mixed body due to the order of the universe. Likewise, whatever part of you is earth or water, even though it naturally sinks, is raised, and stays put, against its nature. The elements obey the universe, staying where they're placed, even if it's against their nature, until they're separated. Isn't it terrible, then, that only your rational part disobeys and doesn't stay where it's supposed to? Especially when it's not asked to do anything against its nature. When your mind moves towards injustice, lack of self-control, sorrow, or fear, it moves away from its nature. When your mind is upset about something that's happened according to divine providence, it's also leaving its place. It was designed for holiness and godliness, which primarily involve humbly submitting to God and His providence in everything, as well as justice. These are duties we're bound to as social beings, and without them, we can't live happily with others. They're also the foundation of all just actions. If someone doesn't have the same goal throughout their life, they can't possibly be the same person throughout their life. But it's not enough to just have a goal. It must be a certain kind of goal. It can't be based on the common conception of what's good, because that varies from person to person. It must be a goal that's good for everyone. So, the goal we set for ourselves must be social. If we align all our actions towards this goal, they'll be consistent, and will remain the same person. Remember the story of the country mouse and the city mouse, and the great fear and terror it instilled in them. Socrates used to call the common beliefs and opinions of people the things that scare foolish children, essentially, the irrational fears that grip the world. In the city of Sparta, at their public events, they provided seats and benches for visitors in the shade, while the Spartans themselves were content to sit anywhere. When asked why he hadn't gone to visit Perdiccas, Socrates replied, "So that I wouldn't die the worst kind of death, unable to repay the kindness shown to me." In the ancient secret teachings of the Ephesians, it was advised that a person should always have in mind one of the great heroes of old. The Pythagoreans had a practice. Early in the morning, the first thing they did was look up at the heavens to remind themselves of the celestial bodies that constantly and unwaveringly followed their courses. This practice served to remind them of order, purity, and simplicity, as no star or planet had anything obscuring its path. There's a story about how Socrates looked when he had to wrap himself in a skin because his wife, Xantippe, had taken away his clothes and carried them outside. He said something to his friends who were embarrassed by his appearance, but were retiring out of respect for him. When it comes to writing or reading, you must be taught before you can do either. The same is even truer for life itself. For you are born a mere slave to your senses and base instincts, devoid of true knowledge and sound reasoning without proper instruction. My heart smiled within me. They will even accuse virtue itself with vile and disgraceful words. Just as people long for figs in winter when they can't have them, so do they yearn for children before they are blessed with them. As often as a father kisses his child, he should say silently to himself, according to Epictetus, "Perhaps tomorrow he may die." But these words are considered ominous. No words are truly ominous if they signify something that is natural. They are no more ominous than saying, to cut grapes when they are ripe. Green grapes, ripe grapes, dried grapes, or raisins, all these are transformations of one thing into another, not into something that does not exist at all, but into something that is not yet in existence. There is no thief or robber of free will, as Epictetus said. He also taught that we should find a certain method of giving assent and always carefully observe the inclinations of our minds, ensuring they are held in check and charitable in evaluating each present object's true worth. We should altogether avoid earnest desire and use aversion only for those things that depend entirely on our own wills. Our quarrel, he said, is not over trivial matters, but whether we should, like the common folk, be insane or, with the help of philosophy, be wise and temperate. Socrates asked, "What do you desire? The souls of rational or irrational beings?" The answer came, rational beings. He asked further, those whose reason is sound and perfect, or those whose reason is corrupted? The reply was, those whose reason is sound and perfect. Socrates concluded, why, then, do you not strive for such? Because we already have them. Then, why do you argue among yourselves? Summary of Chapter 11. Here, Marcus Aurelius emphasizes the importance of rationality and living in harmony with nature and reason. He encourages readers to align their thoughts and actions with the principles of logic and virtue. He advises, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy,